The massive space station called Harmony Prime floated in the darkness between three suns. It was bigger than any city on Earth, with spinning rings that created artificial gravity for the thousands of beings living inside. Today was special. Today, representatives from 43 different alien species would meet to discuss the newest members wanting to join their peaceful alliance. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the window of his ship, the USS Liberty. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. His hands gripped a metal rail as he watched the alien ships docked around the station. Their vessels looked nothing like human ships, where human craft were square and practical, covered in armor and weapon systems. The alien ships curved and flowed like works of art. Jake had been a soldier for 30 years. He fought in the wars on Mars and the asteroid belt conflicts. He knew what real fighting looked like, and he knew that pretty ships usually meant soft enemies. But orders were orders, and Earth wanted peace with these galactic neighbors. Lisa Rodriguez walked onto the observation deck carrying a tablet full of notes. She was Earth's ambassador, a smart woman in her 40s who had spent years learning alien languages and customs. Her job was to convince these creatures that humans deserved a place in their galactic community. Nervous about the speech, Jake asked, not taking his eyes off the alien vessels outside. Lisa looked at her notes again. A little doesn't seem friendly enough. But some of the others, she shook her head. They think we're too violent, too primitive. Jake almost laughed. Too violent. Have they seen what we can do when we're not trying to be violent? That's exactly the problem, Lisa said. They've been at peace for 300 years. They've forgotten what real war looks like. In the main hall of Harmony Prime, Ambassador Cathara of the Zenthari Empire adjusted her long blue robes. She was tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to glow under the station's lights. Her people had been the first to contact Earth 5 years ago, and she genuinely wanted humans to join the Galactic Alliance. But she worried about the other species' reactions. The Corvin delegation sat in the back corner of the hall. They were large lizard-like creatures with sharp teeth and cold eyes. Their leader, Admiral Kane Voss, made no secret of his hatred for humans. He believed they were dangerous warmongers who would destroy the galaxy's hard-won peace. Near the center of the hall, the insect-like hive queens clicked their mandibles nervously. They communicated through chemical signals that smelled like flowers to most species, but to humans, the scent was overwhelming and strange. Their warriors, smaller versions of the queens, stood guard around them with weapons that looked more like art than tools of war. The crystalline ethereals floated in the air without any visible means of support. They were perhaps the most advanced species in the galaxy, capable of manipulating matter and energy with their minds. They rarely spoke, communicating instead through light patterns that danced across their transparent bodies. Commander Alex Carter sat in the Liberty's Communication Center, monitoring radio chatter from across the station. Most of it was routine, diplomatic talk, but something felt wrong. His instruments were picking up strange energy signatures from the edge of the system. Ships were moving out there, ships that weren't supposed to be there. Alex had been Earth's top intelligence officer. For 15 years, he learned to trust his instincts during the corporate wars, when missing a single detail could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Right now, his instincts were screaming that something bad was about to happen. He opened a channel to Captain Morrison. "Jake, we might have a problem. I'm reading unknown ships on the system's edge. They're trying to stay hidden, but our sensors are better than they think." Jake's voice came back immediately. "How many ships?" "At least 60, maybe more. They're big ones, too. Military configuration." Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had suspected this might happen. Not everyone in the galaxy wanted humans to join their peaceful club. Some species would rather see Earth's representatives dead than sitting at the negotiating table on the station. Lisa Rodriguez was reviewing her speech one final time. She planned to talk about human values, about their desire for peace and cooperation. She would mention Earth's scientific achievements and cultural contributions. What she wouldn't mention was humanity's recent wars, their advanced weapons technology, or the fact that every human ship was essentially a mobile weapons platform. The galactic species had rules about warfare. Battles were supposed to be elegant affairs with minimal casualties and careful attention to avoiding civilian targets. Wars were rare, and when they happened, they followed strict protocols that had been developed over centuries. Humans had different ideas about warfare. When humans fought, they fought to win as quickly and completely as possible. They didn't care about elegant tactics or honorable combat. They cared about results. Captain Morrison walked through his ship, checking systems and talking to his crew. The Liberty looked like a diplomatic vessel from the outside, but Jake knew better. Hidden beneath the peaceful exterior were enough weapons to level a small city. The ship's armor could withstand direct hits from most alien weapons, and its engines were powerful enough to outrun anything in the galaxy. The crew was nervous. They were all military veterans, people who had seen real combat. Unlike the aliens on the station, they knew that peace was something you had to fight for. They also knew that sometimes the best way to keep peace was to be ready for war. Dr. Helen Park, the ship's science officer, was monitoring alien technology through passive sensors. What she found was both impressive and disappointing. The aliens had achieved amazing things with energy manipulation and faster-than-light travel. Their medical technology was centuries ahead of Earth's, but their weapons were weak. Their defensive systems were designed for show rather than protection. Their military tactics assumed that enemies would follow the same rules they did. In a real fight, Helen realized most of these species wouldn't last 5 minutes against human forces. Back in the main hall, the ceremony was about to begin. Representatives from dozens of species took their seats, their various forms, creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Some walked on legs, others floated, and a few moved in ways that defied easy description. Ambassador Cathara stood to address the assembly. Her voice was musical, translated into dozens of languages simultaneously by the station's computers. Welcome, friends, to this historic gathering. Today, we consider welcoming a new species into our galactic community. The humans of Earth have requested membership in our alliance, and we are here to evaluate their petition. She gestured toward the human section, where Lisa Rodriguez sat with her small diplomatic team. They looked almost primitive compared to the exotic aliens around them, wearing simple dark suits instead of elaborate robes or natural armor. The humans are young, Cathara continued. Their civilization has existed for only a few thousand years, and they have been traveling between stars for less than a century. But they have shown remarkable progress and expressed sincere desire for peaceful cooperation. Admiral Kane Voss of the Corvin delegation stood up, his massive form casting a shadow across the floor. When he spoke, his voice was a low growl that made several smaller species step back in fear. The humans are not ready, he declared. They are violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. They have spent their entire history fighting wars among themselves. Even now, their ships bristle with weapons. They do not belong in a civilized galaxy. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many species nodded in agreement. Humans did seem crude compared to the refined beings around them. Their technology was impressive but aggressive. Their behavior was direct rather than diplomatic. Lisa Rodriguez felt the mood of the room shifting against humanity. She had expected this reaction, but it still hurt to hear her species described as primitive warmongers. The worst part was that they weren't entirely wrong. Humans were good at war, maybe too good. What none of them knew was that the real test was about to begin. The ships Alex Carter had detected were moving closer to the station. Admiral Kane Voss had made his speech, but he had also made arrangements. If the Galactic Council wouldn't reject humanity peacefully, he would give them a more direct demonstration of why humans didn't belong among civilized species. The trap was closing, and soon everyone would discover just how dangerous humans could be when they were backed into a corner. The Great Hall of Harmony Prime fell silent as Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez walked to the speaking platform. Her footsteps echoed in the massive chamber where representatives from 43 different species waited to hear what humanity had to say. The air smelled strange to her, a mixture of alien scents that made her slightly dizzy. Lisa looked out at the assembled beings. The tall, blue-skinned Zenthari sat in the front rows, their long faces showing what might have been encouragement. Behind them, The insect-like hive queens clicked their mandibles in a rhythm that could mean anything. The floating ethereals glowed softly, their crystalline bodies refracting the hall's lights into rainbow patterns. In the back corner, Admiral Kane Voss and his Corvin delegation stared at her with undisguised hatred. Their reptilian faces showed rows of sharp teeth, and their hands rested on weapons that looked both ancient and deadly. Lisa tried not to think about what those weapons could do to a human body. She began her prepared speech, talking about Earth's desire for peace and cooperation. She spoke about human art, science, and culture. She mentioned their recent medical breakthroughs and their contributions to mathematics and physics. What she didn't mention was the fact that humans had also perfected new ways to kill each other. With frightening efficiency, the alien representatives listened politely, but Lisa could sense their skepticism. To them, humans looked primitive and crude. Human technology was impressive but aggressive. Human ships were covered in armor and weapons instead of the elegant curves and artistic flourishes that marked civilized vessels. Captain Jake Morrison watched the ceremony from the Liberty's bridge. His ship was docked with dozens of alien vessels around Harmony Prime, but something felt wrong. His military instincts, honed by decades of combat, were screaming warnings that he couldn't ignore. Commander Alex Carter burst onto the bridge, his face pale with urgency. "Jake, we have a serious problem. Those ships I detected earlier, they're Corvin military vessels, and they're moving fast toward the station." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "How many?" 67 confirmed contacts. Full battle formation. "They'll be here in 20 minutes. Jake grabbed the communication panel and opened a channel to Earth Command. The response from Admiral Susan Wells was immediate and decisive. "Captain Morrison, you are authorized to defend the diplomatic mission by any means necessary. Reinforcements are already moving to your position." "Reinforcements?" Jake asked. "Ma'am, the nearest Earth fleet is 3 days away." Admiral Wells smiled grimly on the video screen. "Captain, did you really think we sent our diplomatic team to an alien space station with only one ship for protection? Check your long-range sensors." Jake turned to his sensor operator, Lieutenant Bobby Chen. The young man's eyes widened as he read the displays. "Captain, I'm reading massive hyperspace signatures throughout the system. Ships are dropping out of FTL all around us." On the main screen, space began to fill with human vessels. Destroyers materialized first, their angular hulls bristling with missile pods and railgun turrets. Cruisers followed, larger and more heavily armed. Then came the carriers, massive ships that immediately began launching fighter squadrons. Finally, the dreadnoughts appeared. The USS Defiance was the largest, a kilometer-long monster that carried enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. Its dark hull was covered in weapon systems that had no galactic equivalent. Where alien ships carried elegant energy weapons designed for precision, human ships mounted crude but devastatingly effective kinetic weapons and nuclear missiles. Inside Harmony Prime's main hall, alarms began blaring. The peaceful ceremony was shattered as emergency lights bathed everything in red. The massive display screens around the chamber lit up with incoming threat warnings. Admiral Kane Voss appeared on the communication system, his reptilian face twisted with rage and satisfaction. "Attention all species. The human contamination ends today. Your so-called peaceful neighbors have brought weapons of mass destruction to this sacred place. We will cleanse the galaxy of their violence once and for all." The alien representatives erupted in panic. The Xanthari delegation immediately began moving toward evacuation pods. The crystalline ethereals simply vanished in flashes of light, teleporting away to safety. The Hive Queen's warriors formed protective circles around their leaders, but their weapons were designed for ceremonial display rather than real combat. Ambassador Cathara of the Xanthari grabbed Lisa Rodriguez's arm. "Ambassador, your people must evacuate immediately. Corvin weapons are designed to destroy, not capture. They will show no mercy." Lisa looked at the chaos around her and made a decision that would change galactic history. Instead of running, she opened a communication channel to Captain Morrison. "Jake, patch me through to the Corvin fleet." "Lisa, that's not a good idea. We need to get you out of there. Do it." Admiral Kane Voss appeared on the screen, his cold eyes fixed on the human ambassador. "So, the primitive speaks. Are you ready to surrender? Or shall we demonstrate why your species doesn't belong among civilized beings?" Lisa stood straighter, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's communication system. "Admiral Voss, you've made a serious mistake. You assumed that humans came here defenseless. You thought we were weak because we spoke of peace." Kane Voss laughed a sound like breaking glass. "Look around you, human. Your single ship faces our entire battle fleet. What can one vessel do against six?" Lisa smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, she looked completely calm. "One ship, Admiral. Who said anything about one ship?" On the main display, the tactical situation updated to show the full scope of the human presence. The alien representatives stared in shocked silence as the sensors revealed the truth. Humanity hadn't sent a single diplomatic vessel to the Peace Summit. They had sent an entire battle group, Dr. Helen Park, monitoring the situation from the Liberties Science Station, was amazed by the alien reactions. The various species had never seen anything like human military doctrine, where they fought elegant, ritualized battles with minimal casualties. Humans had developed warfare as a science of maximum destruction. The Corvin fleet was impressive by galactic standards. Their ships were large and well-armed, designed for intimidation as much as combat. But they were built according to galactic conventions that assumed enemies would follow the same rules of engagement. Human ships followed different rules. They were designed to fight outnumbered and win through superior firepower and aggressive tactics. Every human vessel was a mobile weapons platform optimized for one purpose: destroying enemy forces as quickly and completely as possible. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Foster, commanding the dreadnought USS Defiance, opened communication channels with the other human ships. His orders were simple and direct: protect the diplomatic mission and eliminate any threats to human personnel. All ships, this is Defiance Actual. We have hostile forces approaching the station. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Show them what human military technology can do. Major Kelly Barnes launched her fighter squadrons from the carrier USS Independence. Unlike alien fighters that relied on energy shields and evasive maneuvers, human fighters were heavily armored and carried explosive payloads designed to cripple capital ships. The pilots were veterans of the Martian colonial wars, men and women who had learned to fight in the vacuum of space where one mistake meant death. Back in the station's main hall, the alien representatives watched the tactical displays with growing horror. The human fleet was moving into attack formation with a precision and aggression that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Ambassador Cathara stared at the screens in disbelief. "How many ships do humans have?" Lisa Rodriguez looked at the displays showing dozens of human vessels taking position around Harmony Prime. This is just our diplomatic escort. You wanted to know if humans belong in a civilized galaxy? Admiral Voss, well, you're about to find out exactly how civilized we can be. The Corvin fleet was seconds away from weapons range. Admiral Kane Voss had expected to face a single frightened diplomatic vessel. Instead, he found himself confronting a human battle fleet that had been designed specifically to fight against overwhelming odds and win. The galaxy's 300-year peace was about to end in the most spectacular display of human military capability anyone had ever witnessed. And the aliens were about to learn why humans had survived every war they had ever fought. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Foster stood in the command center of the USS Defiance, watching tactical displays that showed the approaching Corvin fleet. The massive dreadnought hummed with power as its weapon systems came online. Danny had fought in 3 different wars and commanded ships in dozens of battles. But this felt different. This wasn't just about military victory. This was about showing the galaxy what humans could do when pushed into a corner. The Corvin fleet was impressive by any standard. 67 warships led by the massive dreadnought Dominator. Their vessels were sleek and powerful, designed according to 3 centuries of galactic military tradition. They moved in perfect formation, their energy weapons charging with deadly precision. But Danny Foster had studied alien military tactics during his years at the war college on Mars. He knew their weaknesses: Galactic warfare was based on honor, tradition, and minimizing casualties. Battles were elegant affairs with strict rules about targeting and engagement protocols. The Corvins expected humans to follow the same civilized guidelines. They were about to be very disappointed. Major Kelly Barnes led her fighter squadron away from the carrier. USS Independence, her pilots were flying the newest human interceptors, small but heavily armed craft that could outmaneuver anything in the Galactic Fleet databases. Unlike alien fighters that relied on fancy energy shields, human fighters were built tough, with thick armor and redundant systems that could keep flying even after taking heavy damage. Kelly's squadron was composed entirely of veterans from the asteroid mining conflicts. These were people who had learned to fight in zero gravity, in radiation fields, and in situations where the enemy outnumbered them 10-1. They were used to being outgunned and surrounded. It was exactly the kind of situation they thrived. In Falcon Squadron, this is lead. Kelly transmitted to her pilots. Target the Corvin flagship. Those big ships always have the best shields and the heaviest armor. Let's see how they handle antimatter torpedoes. Back on Harmony Prime, the alien representatives watched the tactical displays with growing terror. Ambassador Cathera of the Zentauri had seen military conflicts before, but nothing like this. The human ships were moving with an aggression that seemed almost insane. They weren't trying to position themselves defensively or negotiate from a position of strength. They were preparing to attack. This is madness, whispered General Morden. The Zentauri military attached. The humans are outnumbered. Why aren't they requesting assistance or trying to establish communication protocols? Lisa Rodriguez heard the question and turned to face the assembled aliens. For the first time since the crisis began, she looked completely confident. General, you're thinking like someone who fights by galactic rules. Humans don't fight by your rules. We fight to win. Admiral Kane Voss of the Corvin Fleet opened communication channels one final time. His reptilian face filled the screens. Throughout the station, human ships, you are completely surrounded. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Continue this foolish resistance, and we will ensure your species remembers this day as the beginning of their extinction. Lieutenant Colonel Foster responded from the Defiance. His voice was calm and professional, the tone of a man who had delivered similar messages many times before. Admiral Voss, this is Colonel Foster of the Earth Defense Force. You have threatened human diplomatic personnel and are preparing to attack a peaceful station. You have exactly 60 seconds to withdraw your forces before we demonstrate why that's a bad idea. Kane Voss laughed, the sound echoing through the communication channels. 60 seconds. Human, you face the combined might of the Corvin hegemony. What can your primitive weapons do against our advanced technology? Foster checked his tactical display one more time. All human ships were in position. Weapons were charged, and targeting solutions were locked. The alien fleet was grouped tightly, together, following standard galactic battle formations that made them perfect targets for human weapons. Admiral Foster said quietly, "You're about to find out." The first wave of human missiles launched simultaneously from every ship in the fleet, where alien weapons were precise energy beams designed to disable specific systems. Human missiles were crude but devastatingly effective. Each warhead contained enough antimatter to vaporize a city block. The missiles moved faster than anything in the galactic weapon databases, and they were designed to overwhelm defensive systems through sheer numbers. Commander Rachel Stone directed the Defiance's main battery. The massive ship's railguns were humanity's answer to alien energy weapons. Instead of elegant particle beams, the railguns fired solid tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds. Each projectile carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon, and they were impossible to stop with conventional shields. The first railgun volley hit the Corvin formation like a sledgehammer. The tungsten rods punched through alien shields and armor as if they weren't there. 2 Corvin cruisers exploded immediately, their hulls torn apart by the massive kinetic impacts. 3 more ships spun out of control, their engines destroyed, and their crews dead or dying on Harmony Prime. The alien representatives stared at the tactical displays in shocked silence. In less than 30 seconds, the human fleet had destroyed or crippled 5 Corvin warships. The attack was so swift and brutal that many of the observers couldn't process what they were seeing. Dr. Helen Pock monitored the battle from the Liberty Science Station. Her sensors showed something that amazed and terrified her. The human weapons were operating at energy levels that should have been impossible for ships of their size. Human power generation was decades ahead of galactic standards, and their weapons were designed with one principle in mind: maximum destruction. Lieutenant Nathan Cross led his fighter squadron in a direct assault on the Corvin flagship. The Dominator was a massive vessel, 3 times the size of the largest human ship. Its shields were the most advanced in the galaxy, and its armor was designed to withstand any known weapon. But Nathan's fighters carried antimatter torpedoes, weapons that didn't exist in galactic databases. The torpedoes were human innovations, designed specifically to punch through any defensive system. They were crude, dangerous, and incredibly effective. The torpedo strike hit the Dominator's main shield generator, overloading the entire defensive grid. For a brief moment, the massive ship was completely vulnerable. That moment was all the human fleet needed. Every human ship in range opened fire simultaneously. Railgun rounds, missiles, and energy weapons that had been developed during the corporate wars all focused on the Corvin flagship. The Dominator's advanced armor held for almost 10 seconds before the combined firepower tore through its hull. Admiral Kane Voss had just enough time to send one final transmission before his ship exploded. "Impossible," he whispered. "How can primitives have such weapons?" The answer was simple, though the aliens didn't understand it yet. Humans had spent their entire history fighting wars. They had developed weapons technology, not for show or tradition, but for one purpose: killing enemies as efficiently as possible. Their ships weren't elegant works of art. They were mobile weapons, platforms designed by a species that had perfected warfare as a science. Major Kelly Barnes pulled her fighter away from the expanding fireball that had been the Corvin flagship. Around her, the remaining alien ships were either fleeing or exploding under the relentless human assault. The battle that Admiral Kane Voss had expected to be a simple massacre was turning into a complete rout in the space of 15 minutes. The human fleet had destroyed 37 Corvin warships and sent the rest fleeing toward the system's edge. Not a single human vessel had been lost, though several had sustained minor damage from the few alien weapons that had managed to find. Their targets thought the alien representatives on Harmony Prime sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The humans hadn't just won a military victory. They had demonstrated that every assumption about galactic warfare was wrong. Ambassador Cathara looked at Lisa Rodriguez with new understanding. "Your species," she said slowly. "They're not like us at all." Lisa nodded. "No, Ambassador, we're really not. The question is whether that's something the galaxy can live with." The battle was over, but the real consequences were just beginning. The galaxy's 300-year peace had been shattered, and humanity had announced their arrival with the most devastating display of military force anyone had ever seen. Everything had changed, and there was no going back. The Great Hall of Harmony Prime was completely silent, except for the soft humming of life support systems. Debris from the destroyed Corvin fleet drifted past the station's windows like deadly snow. The alien representatives sat frozen in their seats, staring at tactical displays that showed the aftermath of the most one-sided battle in galactic history. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez walked slowly to the center of the hall. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space as dozens of alien species watched her every movement. The atmosphere had changed completely. Where before there had been condescension and barely hidden contempt, now there was fear and something that might have been respect. "The immediate threat has been neutralized," Lisa announced, her voice carrying clearly through the station's communication system. "Human forces will maintain defensive positions around Harmony Prime until all diplomatic personnel are confirmed safe." Ambassador Cathara of the Zenthari was the first to speak. Her musical voice trembled slightly as she asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Ambassador Rodriguez, how is this possible? Our intelligence reports indicated that humanity possessed only basic space technology. Your weapons, they're unlike anything in our databases. Lisa looked around the hall at the assembled beings. These creatures had ruled the galaxy for centuries, confident in their technological superiority and their civilized approach to conflict. Now they were learning that there were other ways to solve problems, and some of those ways were far more effective than elegant negotiations. Ambassador Catcher, your intelligence was incomplete, Lisa replied. Humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. We've had to develop very efficient ways of protecting ourselves. General Morden, the Zenthari military expert, stood up on shaking legs. His pale blue skin had turned almost white with shock. General Rodriguez, I must ask, ... The weapons your ships used, the kinetic projectiles alone had more destructive power than our largest energy cannons. How did you achieve such energy concentrations? Dr. Helen Park answered from her position near the human delegation. General human technology developed along different lines than yours. Where you focused on efficiency and elegance, we focused on raw power and effectiveness. Our ships carry fusion reactors that generate more energy than most of your space station. The insect-like hive queens clicked their mandibles in rapid patterns, their chemical communications filling the air with flowery scents that made several species step back. Their translator finally spoke in the standard galactic language. The queens wish to know if human aggression extends to all interactions, or if peaceful coexistence remains possible. Captain Jake Morrison entered the hall from the docking bay, still wearing his military uniform with its insignia of rank and combat decorations. The alien studied him carefully, noting the scars on his hands and the way he moved like a predator, even in this diplomatic setting. Your Majesties, Jake said, addressing the hive queens with formal politeness. Humans prefer peace when possible, but we've learned that sometimes the best way to keep peace is to be very good at war. The Corvins chose to threaten our diplomatic mission. We responded appropriately. The crystalline ethereals who had disappeared during the battle began materializing in flashes of light throughout the hall. Their transparent bodies pulsed with colors that indicated deep thought and concern. When they finally spoke, their voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. We have observed the engagement through quantum resonance fields. Human tactical doctrine is ... unprecedented. You do not follow the accords of civilized warfare. Your weapons are designed solely for destruction rather than controlled conflict resolution. Lisa nodded. The ethereals are correct. Humans don't fight by your rules because we come from a different kind of world. On Earth, wars weren't games with preset rules. They were survival situations where only the winners got to go home. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Foster's voice came through the communication system from the USS Defiance. Harmony Prime Control. This is Defiance Actual. We're receiving surrender transmissions from the remaining Corvan vessels. What are your instructions? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. The alien representatives looked at each other uncertainly. In 3 centuries of galactic civilization, military surrenders were handled through complex diplomatic protocols that could take days or weeks to complete. Jake Morrison stepped forward. Colonel Foster, accept their surrender and escort the surviving ships to the system boundary. Make it clear that any return to this system will be considered an act of war. Understood, Captain? Defiance out. The efficiency of the exchange shocked the aliens even more than the battle itself. Humans handled military situations with the same direct approach they used for everything else. No lengthy negotiations, no complex honor protocols, just simple and effective decisions. Ambassador Kethera looked around the hall at her fellow representatives. Many species were already making preparations to leave the station. The comfortable assumption that humans were primitive newcomers had been shattered completely. Ambassador Rodriguez, she said carefully, I believe we need to reconsider humanity's application for membership in the Galactic Peace Council. A new voice interrupted the conversation. Admiral Beth Parker appeared on the communication screens, transmitting from her flagship as it dropped out of hyperspace near the station. She was a stern-looking woman in her 60s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. This is Admiral Parker of the Earth Defense Force. I'm assuming command of human forces in this system? Captain Morrison, report. Jake stepped to the communication panel. Admiral, the Corvin attack has been repelled. 37 enemy vessels destroyed, 30 fleeing the system. No human casualties. The diplomatic mission is secure. Admiral Parker nodded with satisfaction. Excellent work, Captain. I'm bringing additional forces to establish a permanent human presence in this sector. It appears the galaxy needs to learn some new lessons about the cost of threatening Earth's interests. The alien representatives exchanged nervous glances. The idea of a permanent human military presence in galactic space was terrifying. These beings had just demonstrated that they could destroy entire fleets without breaking a sweat. Dr. Helen Park continued her analysis of the battle, sharing her findings with the assembled aliens. The engagement lasted exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds. Human forces expended less than 8% of their available munitions. The tactical advantage was achieved through superior firepower concentration and aggressive maneuvering that disregarded conventional safety protocols. The Hive Queen's translator spoke again. Dr. Park, the Queens are curious about human casualty rates during the engagement. 0 dead, 0 wounded, Helen replied. 3 ships sustained minor damage that will be repaired within hours. The silence that followed this announcement was deafening. The aliens had expected to witness a heroic but doomed human last stand. Instead, they had seen a complete and effortless military victory that left the attackers dead or fleeing while the humans didn't lose a single person. Major Kelly Barnes entered the hall, still wearing her flight suit, her helmet tucked under her arm. Her fighter squadron had just returned from hunting down fleeing Corvin vessels. The aliens stared at her with a mixture of fear and fascination. Ma'am, she reported to Lisa Rodriguez, we've confirmed that all remaining Corvin ships have left the system. Several attempted to send distress signals to their home territories before fleeing. Lisa frowned. That could be a problem. If the Corvin hegemony decides to send a larger fleet, Admiral Parker's voice cut through the communication channel. Ambassador, let me worry about Corvin reinforcements. The galaxy is about to learn that threatening human diplomatic missions is a very expensive mistake. The alien representatives began to understand that they were witnessing something historic. The galactic balance of power had just shifted dramatically. Humanity had announced their arrival, not with words or treaties, but with the most devastating display of military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. Ambassador Kethera stood up slowly, her tall form trembling slightly. Ambassador Rodriguez, on behalf of the Galactic Peace Council, I formally invite humanity to join our alliance. We believe your species will bring valuable perspectives to our organization. Lisa Rodriguez smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Thank you, Ambassador Kethera. We accept your invitation. I think this is the beginning of a very interesting partnership. Outside the station, human warships maintained their positions around Harmony Prime. The galaxy's long peace was over, but perhaps something more stable would take its place. Peace maintained not through naive hope, but through the clear understanding that some species were much better as allies than enemies. The universe had just become a more dangerous place, but it had also become more honest about what real peace actually required. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Harmony Prime, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The emergency session of the Galactic Peace Council had been meeting continuously, with representatives from 43 species debating the implications of humanity's dramatic entrance into galactic politics. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez sat at the newly installed human delegation table, reviewing reports from Earth about the galaxy's reaction to recent events. The news was mixed. Some species were requesting immediate diplomatic contact with humanity. Others were demanding that humans be expelled from galactic space entirely. A few had simply gone silent, their governments apparently too shocked to formulate any response. Ambassador Kethera of the Xanthari called the session to order. Her musical voice carried a new note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before the battle. Fellow representatives, we gather today to formally address humanity's membership in our alliance and to discuss the new realities facing our galaxy. The crystalline ethereals floated in their designated area, their transparent bodies pulsing with nervous energy. When they spoke, their collective voice seemed strained. The quantum disruptions caused by human weapons continue to resonate through local space-time. Their technology operates on principles we do not fully understand. General Morden of the Xanthari stood to present his completed analysis of the human military capabilities demonstrated during the battle. His pale blue skin still looked slightly gray, as if the shock hadn't completely worn off. Distinguished delegates, I have spent 3 weeks studying the engagement data. The conclusions are ... disturbing. He activated a holographic display that showed the tactical breakdown of the battle. Human weapons technology is approximately 50 years ahead of our most advanced systems. Their power generation capabilities exceed our largest space stations. Most significantly, their tactical doctrine appears designed specifically for fighting against superior numbers. The insect-like hive queens clicked their mandibles rapidly, filling the air with chemical signals that smelled like burning flowers. Their translator spoke in the standard galactic language. The queens wish to know if humanity poses a threat to peaceful species, or if their aggression is reserved for hostile forces. Captain Jake Morrison stood to answer the question. He had been promoted to admiral after the battle, though he still wore the same tired expression that marked all veteran soldiers. Your Majesties, humans have no interest in conquering peaceful species. We came here seeking membership in your alliance. We defended ourselves when attacked. Nothing more. But the Hive Queens weren't satisfied with that answer. Their translator continued. Admiral Morrison, your species demonstrated the ability to destroy our combined fleets with minimal effort. How can the galaxy trust that humanity will not use this power for conquest? Jake looked around the hall at the assembled aliens. These beings had ruled the galaxy for centuries through diplomatic tradition and elegant negotiations. They couldn't understand a species that solved problems through overwhelming force when necessary. Your Majesties, Jake said carefully, humans learned long ago that the best way to avoid wars is to be very good at winning them. Aggressors think twice when they know the cost of failure. Dr. Helen Park presented her scientific analysis of human technology to the Council. Her findings had shocked even the most advanced species in the galaxy. Distinguished representatives, human civilization developed along completely different technological paths than yours. Where you achieved advancement through cooperation and resource sharing, humans advanced through competition and conflict. She displayed energy readings from human ship reactors. The result is technology optimized for maximum output rather than efficiency or elegance. Human warships generate more power than most of your orbital installations. Admiral Beth Parker's image appeared on the communication screens from her flagship in orbit around Harmony Prime. She had established a permanent human fleet presence in the system, much to the aliens' discomfort. Council members, I've received authorization from Earth to make humanity's position clear. The hall fell silent. Everyone understood that Admiral Parker's next words would shape the galaxy's future. Earth offers friendship and cooperation too. All peaceful species, she continued. We're willing to share our medical technology, our scientific discoveries, and our cultural achievements. But we will not tolerate threats to human personnel or interests. The Corvin attack was a lesson that we hope won't need to be repeated. A new voice interrupted the session. The Vorthan Collective, a species that had remained neutral during the crisis, finally spoke through their representative. The Vorthans were ancient beings who had seen the rise and fall of many galactic civilizations. Humans of Earth, the delegate said in a voice like distant thunder. We have observed your species for the brief time since first contact. You remind us of ourselves in our younger days, before we learned that true strength comes from wisdom rather than weapons. Jake Morrison looked at the ancient being with interest. With respect, delegate, wisdom without the ability to defend it is just philosophy. The Corvins didn't attack us because we lacked wisdom. They attacked because they thought we were weak. Vorthan considered this response for a long moment. Perhaps you are correct, Admiral. Perhaps the galaxy has grown too comfortable with peace. Your arrival may serve as a necessary reminder that freedom must sometimes be defended with force. Ambassador, Kethera stood to address the fundamental question facing the Council. The issue before us is clear. Humanity possesses military capabilities that could reshape galactic politics. The question is whether we accept them as partners or treat them as a threat. Lisa Rodriguez rose to speak for humanity one final time. Ambassador Cachiara! Fellow representatives, I understand your concerns. Humans are different from the species that founded this alliance. We come from a world where peace was earned through strength rather than given through tradition. She looked around the hall at the dozens of alien faces watching her. But consider this. The Corvin attack would have succeeded against any other species. Your elegant ships and civilized weapons would have been helpless against their aggression. Human presence in this galaxy means that bullies like Admiral Kane Voss will think very carefully before threatening peaceful peoples. The ethereals pulsed with deep blue light, indicating serious consideration. Ambassador Rodriguez speaks truth. The Corvin hegemony has threatened peaceful species for decades. Our diplomatic protests were ignored because they knew we lacked the military strength to enforce our objections. Major Kelly Barnes entered the hall, still wearing her flight suit from a patrol mission. Her presence reminded everyone that human military forces were actively protecting the station while they debated. Ma'am, she reported to Admiral Parker's image. Long-range sensors show 3 more species requesting permission to approach the station. They're sending diplomatic vessels under flags of truce. Admiral Parker nodded. Grant them safe passage, Major. It seems word of recent events is spreading. Over the following hours, representatives from the Draconis Empire, the Aquatic Confederation, and the silicon-based mechanoids all arrived at Harmony Prime. Each brought the same message. Their governments wanted to establish diplomatic relations with humanity immediately. The Draconis representative, a proud warrior species that had remained outside the Galactic Alliance for centuries, spoke with particular directness. Humans of Earth, the Draconis Empire recognizes strength when we see it. We propose a mutual defense agreement between our species. The vote on human membership was unanimous. Even the species that had initially opposed humanity's inclusion now voted in favor, understanding that having humans as allies was far preferable to having them as potential enemies. As the session concluded, Ambassador Cathara approached Lisa Rodriguez privately. Ambassador, I must ask, the fleet that defended this station, was that truly just a diplomatic escort? Lisa smiled. Ambassador, humans have learned that successful diplomacy requires the ability to defend your negotiating position. What you saw here was indeed our diplomatic escort. Our actual military fleets are considerably larger. The Xanthari ambassador's pale blue skin went almost white again. How much larger? Large enough, Lisa replied. Large enough that the galaxy can remain at peace as long as everyone remembers the cost of breaking it. 6 months later, Corvin Hegemony formally requested membership in the Galactic Peace Council. Their application included a formal apology to humanity and a pledge to abide by all Alliance regulations. Regarding the treatment of diplomatic personnel, the galaxy had learned a simple but important lesson. Sometimes the best way to keep peace is to be very, very good at war. Humanity had crashed the galaxy's comfortable illusions about conflict, but in doing so, they had created something more stable than the fragile peace that had existed before. The universe was a more honest place. Now, an honest peace was always stronger than peace built on wishful thinking.